the Florida Everglades, a place of beauty and danger. On a stormy December night in 1972, this unforgiving wilderness claimed Eastern Airlines Flight 401. Over 100 souls perished, including Captain Robert Loft and flight engineer Donald Repo. But their story didn't end in the murky swamp. From the wreckage, whispers of strange occurrences began to surface. Whispers that would turn into chilling accounts, challenging everything we know about life, death, and what might lie beyond. It wasn't just passengers who were seeing things. Mechanics, hardened by years of working on airplanes, swore they saw a figure tinkering in the maintenance bays late at night. A figure that resembled the deceased flight engineer, Donald Repo. Tools would go missing, only to reappear in impossible places. Strange noises, like the clang of a wrench or the hiss of hydraulics, echoed through the hangars when no one was supposed to be there. Fear began to grip those who worked on the planes. Experienced crews refused to fly on aircraft that contained parts from Flight 401. The whispers grew louder, spreading beyond the hangars, until the story of the haunted planes became a chilling legend. It was a routine flight, another trip through the starlit sky. Eastern Airlines Flight 401, a Lockheed L-1011 TriStar, departed New York's JFK Airport on December 29, 1972, its destination, Miami. On board were 163 passengers and 13 crew members, all eager to spend the holidays with loved ones. Captain Robert Loft, a veteran pilot, commanded the aircraft. At his side was First Officer Albert Stockstill and Flight Engineer Donald Repo. The initial hours of the flight were uneventful. The TriStar soared effortlessly through the night sky. Laughter and conversation filled the cabin as passengers enjoyed in-flight entertainment. The crew, calm and collected, went through their pre-landing checks. Miami glittered on the horizon, but fate had other plans. As Flight 401 began its descent, a minor issue arose. A landing gear indicator light failed to illuminate. The crew initiated a holding pattern over the Everglades. They needed to visually confirm the landing gear's status. Minutes stretched into an agonizing hour as they circled above the dark expanse. The passengers began to sense a change in the atmosphere. The once jovial mood gave way to tension. While the crew focused on the landing gear, a silent threat emerged. The autopilot had been inadvertently disengaged. The TriStar was now drifting downward, unnoticed. The crew remained oblivious to their peril. Outside the plane, the swamp awaited, unaware of the tragedy about to unfold. At 11:42 p.m., the unthinkable happened. Flight 401, its altitude critically low, clipped its right wing on a mangrove tree. The impact, sudden and violent, ripped through the aircraft. Screams pierced the night as the plane cartwheeled across the swamp. The once ordered world inside the TriStar dissolved into chaos. Luggage compartments burst open, spewing their contents into the darkness. The crash site became a frantic race against time. Rescue workers toiled tirelessly through the treacherous swamp. But amidst the wreckage, there were also stories of survival. These stories would soon be overshadowed by chilling accounts from the salvaged remains of Flight 401. The whispers of ghostly apparitions would forever link this tragic event to the supernatural. In the aftermath of the crash, investigators and engineers descended upon the wreckage of Flight 401. The Everglades became a hive of activity. Amidst the twisted metal and scattered debris, a controversial decision was made. Some parts, deemed perfectly functional, were salvaged. These components were meticulously cataloged and transported back to Eastern Airlines hangars. The airline, facing financial pressures, saw this as a practical solution. What they didn't foresee was the chilling chain of events that would follow. Inside the hangars, the salvaged parts from Flight 401 were treated like any other components. Mechanics went about their work, unaware of the invisible baggage these parts carried. The salvaged engines, once roaring with life, now stood silent. Seats, stripped of their upholstery, seemed to echo with the silent whispers of the passengers they once carried. The air in the hangars took on an eerie stillness, as if the salvaged parts had brought with them a piece of the Everglades night. As weeks turned into months, a strange unease began to settle over the hangars and the planes that now carried parts from Flight 401. Mechanics would pause, tools in hand, feeling a sudden chill or catching a fleeting glimpse of movement. Stories began to circulate. Whispered accounts passed from one shift to the next. Tools would go missing, only to reappear in impossible places. Strange noises, like the hiss of hydraulics or the muffled sound of footsteps, echoed through the hangars late at night. At first, these occurrences were dismissed as pranks, but as the reports multiplied, a chilling realization dawned upon those who worked on the planes. It wasn't just the hangars that were affected. The strange phenomena seemed to follow the salvaged parts, like a curse clinging to the remnants of the crash. The whispers grew louder, evolving from nervous jokes to hushed conversations filled with dread. Something wasn't right, and the mechanics found themselves confronting a force they couldn't explain. The unease that had gripped the hangars soon spread to the skies. Flight attendants began reporting strange encounters. A man in a captain's uniform would appear seemingly out of thin air, only to vanish just as quickly. His presence was accompanied by an icy chill. Some claimed he spoke, offering warnings about potential mechanical issues. These warnings, dismissed as hallucinations at first, would later prove eerily accurate. One time, a flight attendant saw the ghostly captain standing in the galley, his gaze fixed on a particular oven. Later, during pre-flight checks, that very oven was found to be malfunctioning. Another crew member swore she saw the captain disappear into a bulkhead. Word of these sightings spread like wildfire. Passengers began reporting their own encounters. Their descriptions were eerily similar. A somber figure in a captain's uniform, his eyes filled with a mixture of sadness and urgency. The ghostly presence wasn't confined to the passenger cabins. Mechanics would catch fleeting glimpses of a figure resembling the deceased flight engineer, Donald Repo. Tools would vanish from locked cabinets, only to reappear on workbenches. Strange noises would draw them to empty sections of the hangar. One mechanic described feeling a cold spot settle over him as he worked on a hydraulic system. He looked up and saw a figure resembling Repo standing beside him, pointing to a specific valve. Then he vanished. Upon closer inspection, the valve was found to be faulty. The mechanic couldn't shake the feeling that he had been warned. It's as if Repo was still watching over them, ensuring the safety of the aircraft, even in death. The stories began subtly, whispers exchanged between flight attendants. They spoke of a figure, a man in a captain's uniform, appearing on flights that carried the salvaged parts of Flight 401. His appearances were fleeting, a glimpse of a somber face in a dimly lit galley, a shadow passing through the aisle. At first, these sightings were dismissed as stress, but as the reports increased, a chilling pattern began to emerge. The figure bore a striking resemblance to Captain Robert Loft. One flight attendant recounted her encounter with the apparition. She saw him standing by the forward bulkhead, his hands clasped behind his back. He seemed as real as any other passenger, yet there was something ethereal about him. She called to him, but he didn't respond. When she approached, he simply vanished, leaving her with a profound sense of unease. The apparitions weren't limited to fleeting appearances. In several instances, the ghostly captain was said to have interacted with the crew, offering warnings about potential dangers. One pilot described feeling a cold spot settle over him as he ran through his pre-flight checks. Turning in his seat, he saw the figure of Captain Loft, seated in the jump seat behind him. his finger pointing towards a gauge on the instrument panel. The gauge, indicating oil pressure in one of the engines, flickered erratically. Following the ghostly warning, the pilot ordered a thorough inspection of the engine. A hairline fracture was discovered in the oil line, a flaw that could have led to catastrophic engine failure. The mechanics couldn't explain how the pilot had known about the issue. The faulty line had passed all previous inspections. Word of the incident spread quickly, cementing the belief that Captain Loft was watching over the planes that carried remnants of his final flight. Perhaps the most chilling encounter with the ghostly captain occurred on a flight from New York to Mexico City. A young flight attendant, new to the airline and unaware of the rumors, was making her rounds through the darkened cabin when she saw him. He was seated in the last row, his uniform crisp, his cap resting on his lap. Terrified, she froze, unsure of what to do. The man leaned forward and spoke, his voice a low rasp. "Tell the captain," he whispered, "the autopilot. It's not to be trusted." The flight attendant managed to stammer out a response, but the man was gone. She immediately reported the encounter to the captain, who agreed to have the autopilot system checked. They discovered a malfunctioning relay, a tiny component on the verge of failure. The flight attendant never forgot her encounter with the ghostly captain, a chilling reminder that some things defy logical explanation. While Captain Loft haunted the passenger cabins and cockpits, flight engineer Donald Repo's ghostly presence was felt in the hangars and maintenance areas.
Mechanics reported eerie encounters, fleeting glimpses of a figure resembling Repo, accompanied by an icy chill and the faint scent of jet fuel.
One veteran mechanic described a particularly unnerving experience. He saw a figure resembling Repo, standing beside the engine, his hand resting on the cowling. Shaken but resolute, the mechanic returned to his work, knowing Repo was still watching over his beloved planes.
The ghostly appearances of Donald Repo were often accompanied by strange occurrences, as if the spectral mechanic was trying to communicate through the tools of his trade. Mechanics would find tools missing from their meticulously organized toolboxes, only to have them reappear in impossible locations.
In one instance, a mechanic found himself inexplicably drawn to a particular valve, discovering a hairline crack that could have led to catastrophic failure. Despite numerous sightings and unexplainable events, the mystery of Flight 401's ghost pilot remains unsolved. Was it mass hysteria, or something beyond our understanding? Captain Loft and Donald Repo, bound to the aircraft, trying to complete unfinished business? The haunted planes continue to fascinate, a chilling reminder of unsolved mysteries. The growing number of ghost sightings placed Eastern Airlines in a difficult position. Publicly, the company dismissed the stories as ludicrous. They launched internal investigations, attributing the reports to stress and fatigue. After all, they were a reputable airline built on safety and reliability. Acknowledging ghosts could lead to panic and financial disaster. Eastern Airlines made a decision that would forever shroud the Flight 401 case in mystery. Quietly, they issued an order. All parts salvaged from the wreckage of Flight 401 were to be removed and placed in storage. The order, shrouded in secrecy, was carried out with efficiency and trepidation. Mechanics worked late into the night, carefully dismantling the planes. The engines, now silent, were carefully crated and labeled. The dismantling of the salvaged parts effectively silenced the ghost sightings. The ghost pilot and flight engineer of Flight 401 faded into legend, their story becoming a chilling chapter in aviation history. Eastern Airlines denied the ghost sightings. Despite denials, Flight 401's story continues to fascinate and intrigue. The story of Flight 401 didn't end in the Florida Everglades. It reverberated through Eastern Airlines, whispered by those who encountered the unexpected. Tales of Captain Loft and Donald Repo continue to fascinate. They remind us that the line between life and death can be thin. Decades later, the legend of Flight 401 still captures the imagination. The human mind, wired to seek patterns, struggles to reconcile the rational world with the supernatural. The case of Flight 401, with its blend of tragedy and chilling encounters, remains a testament to this struggle. Could it be that some souls, bound by duty, linger even after their physical bodies have perished? A chilling reminder that sometimes the most unsettling truth is that we may never truly know.